Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Smoko podcast. My name is Alexis Armstrong, your host. Nice to meet you. The Smoko podcast is the place to celebrate and highlight women, trans women, and non binary folk working within STEM and trade occupations. So please tune in, take a break, and join us. We are on Smoko. And today we are extremely lucky to be joined by the lovely Kaylin McLeod, who is from Gearing Up Engineering. Gearing Up is a fantastic program that I've been a fan of for a very long time, being a Vancouverite. And we're going to talk a little bit about what the organization does, what its mission, but we're also going to talk a little bit about her role within the program and her role within engineering outreach and youth engagement. And what does it mean to have youth engagement? And why do we need that within STEM? And kind of have that conversation of STEM and early education and trying to get early education and early exposure to engineering. And so that's going to be our conversation today. I really am excited to get into it. I love gearing up. And so I'm just really excited to learn more. Kaylin, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Alexis. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. I'm can't wait to kind of dive into the program and everything. But something that I thought was a little bit different is that your background is in psychology. And I was wondering if we
Mhm.
could start there and if you could kind of walk through how you became interested in this field. And then if there's any like particular subfield or aspect of psychology that you became the most interested in that kind of led you down that pathway of getting a degree in psychology.
Yeah, I think I first became interested in psychology in high school in grade 11. I'm from Ontario, so it was an intro to anthropology, sociology, psychology class. And, one of those classes where you kind of get a taste test of all of the different fields, which is kind of foreshadowing for what I
Mhm.
think is really important in education. But I became really interested as a teenager in the personality realm of
Mm.
psychology. And then I decided to come to UBC and pursue psychology as my bachelor's degree. And I quickly realized that my passion in psych actually wasn't personality per se, but it was more of the kind of developmental psychology,
Ooh.
behavioral psych, and kind of a little bit of the neuroscience aspect of it. So I took some really interesting courses about like the brain and behavior, brain dysfunction and recovery, and then a bunch of things like classes about like childhood and adolescence and infancy. And I think the most pivotal course for me was taking a course called Applied Developmental Psychology, where you aren't just learning about the theories of developmental psych, but how to actually apply them into practice.
Oh, cool.
And I found that that one was really interesting to me because I worked with youth for a really long
Mhm.
time, and I could actually take what I learned in that course and apply it to practice. And I keep using the learnings that I found in that class. Yeah.
I love that answer because I was actually going to bring it back to your volunteering. I was like, okay, like
Mhm.
hearing you answer that and hearing to be like, okay, I like youth development and understanding kind of like the development side and the neuroscience side of psychology. I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Because if you look at your background is all volunteering and all really
Mhm.
like education volunteering. And so that's fantastic that you have that draw. That's wonderful. And what a cool background to have with gearing up. I feel like that's the best foundation that you can have with kind of understanding early neuroscience and development of youth. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it definitely proves helpful when it comes to training instructors and just kind of showing them, what are the different stages that kids go through as they develop. Like, it's just a really interesting realm, and I could go into it all day, but it definitely proves helpful in our work because we as an organization are also really motivated to get kids with exceptionalities and different learning needs into our
Mhm.
camps. And we honestly get a lot of psychology students in our program, like as staff, and we can talk a bit more about that later. But like the diversity of thought within the organization, I think it's something that has really made us very successful. So yeah, people always ask me all the time. They're like, "Are you an engineer?" And I have to say,
No.
no, but but yeah,
Yeah. No, but I'm very good at my job and I'm very well trained
yeah.
for my job because like that's exactly what I studied. And that's cool that it has that kind of aspect to it. And I love that part of the story of a full circle of like you working in camps and structuring these programs, that your education was also looking at a structured background. It wasn't just like, okay, this is the stages of development, but like what do they need and what is the structural component that we need to put into play to help them develop. Like that's a really cool part of your education. That's wonderful. we spoke a little bit earlier, and you mentioned that growing up in rural Ontario, you kind of didn't really know that engineering existed. And like it wasn't something that was explained at a young age. Could you kind of talk to when you discovered engineering and that feeling that if discovered earlier, it kind of would have changed your trajectory? Because I thought that was really interesting. But then I thought it was also kind of interesting that this lack of discovery maybe had a bigger impact on your life. And I feel like this led you in a way to your current job at Gearing Up and like resonating with the mission of the program. So I was wondering if you could kind of speak to the discovery of engineering or maybe the lack of discovery of engineering in rural Ontario.
Yeah, I honestly didn't understand truly the breadth of possibilities within engineering and STEM in general until I
Mhm.
got my job at Gearing Up. And I know that sounds weird to say, and like, maybe I could have done more research as a kid, but you really don't know what you
No.
don't know when you're a teenager. So, yeah, it wasn't until I was in university and I was studying, and I remember like walking through campus and seeing the Gearing Up camps and being like, oh, engineering camps for kids, like that's really interesting. But yeah, like I didn't think to look into that as a teenager. Like it just
Mhm.
wasn't on my mind. I grew up in a really rural community, and the main focuses like were agriculture
Mhm.
and manufacturing, and so there's a lot of engineering careers even just within those realms. But I don't think they were really, we weren't told about them. And it was, I think, I'm pretty sure the moment was when I was helping out develop curriculum, which was, first of all, very daunting as a psychology student because I was like, I don't know anything about engineering. But then people were just telling me, like, it's a way of thinking, like, it's
Mhm.
creative thinking, it's the engineering design cycle, it's more than just like a career and things like that. And
Mhm.
so we were developing curriculum for biomedical engineering activity. And I think it was, we were making like a prosthetic hand. And it was
Cool.
a design challenge where the girls in the event had to design their own prosthetic hand. And I was just enamored with that
Mm.
concept of like, oh, biomedical engineering just as a field is
Yeah, so
super
cool.
cool. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's very cool. And it's also a really, really good particular subset of engineering for getting
Mhm.
kids into the topic. But then it was kind of like I stepped back and I was like, wow, if I had done this kind of event as a teenage girl, like
Mhm.
I would have maybe gone that route. And I think back and, I did all of the high school student classes that would have prepped me to get into
Mhm.
like engineering or STEM, but I just didn't know the breadth of the career possibilities that were within the field. And I think back also, and like I've always been a problem solver. I'm
Mhm.
a handicraft person. Like I love making things with my hands. I like helped my dad build things around our hobby farm as a kid,
Oh.
but I just never really understood what engineering was until I joined Gearing Up. And I think, if I had had that introduction as a kid, maybe my path could have been different. Maybe I would have still ended up in the same place. We'll never know until we
Yeah.
can jump through multiverses, I guess. But, but yeah,
Until an engineer makes that space loop, we're
exactly.
not gonna know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you in so many ways, and I think you hit the nail on the head perfectly with this idea that, like, we might already be young scientists or young engineers and just not
Mhm.
have the knowledge base to be like, yes, that is what you're doing right now. Like you helping your dad on a hobby farm and building things and problem solving and having that engineer mindset and that like process frame mindset. That is what engineering is. Like you were a young engineer as a kid. You just didn't have the words or like maybe the structure to be like, okay, follow that pathway and go down that career. Like it's interesting that that wasn't presented to you. And
Mhm.
I resonate to that. Like, I didn't become interested. I didn't even know geology really existed until second year university. And
Yeah.
I, by accident, took a paleontology class because I started in marine biology. And then I made the switch after that. Right. Like, I didn't really think that it was for me or that it might have known it existed as a field, but I didn't really even consider that that was my path and that was a career. That must kind of be really special watching young people now get exposed to something that you wish that you had been exposed to when you're younger, or to be like, "Oh my goodness, the power of that." Like, that must feel
Yeah.
kinda cool.
It definitely, it feels good. Like it does feel good work. I think, I get to come to work every day and help inspire the next generation of engineers and scientists. And we're not fools. We know that not every kid that comes through a program is going to become an engineer or a scientist, and
Mhm.
that's okay. What matters more is just that they know that the possibilities are out there, and that's really all that we can ask for.
Oh, totally. Like, they have that skill set and that they're just exposed to it. Like, it
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's nice, honestly. I think the power too is just for both young men and women to have other women engineers and other women scientists walk into a classroom and to be like, this is what an engineer looks like. This
Yeah.
is what a scientist looks like. Like that alone is all that you can kind of hope to change that idea and change that mindset. Like that's what's so powerful about Gearing Up
Yeah.
and the program. If we could dive into it a little bit, Kaylin, could you kind of, because we've talked a little bit about Gearing Up, but could you kind of, if those people are unaware of what the program is, could you kind of talk to what is the organization? What is the mission of Gearing Up? And then what do you guys do? Like, who are you? What do you do? And how do you do it?
Yeah, for sure. So Gearing Up Engineering Outreach was back in 1995, an engineering student. It was her capstone project. So she
Oh,
decided to make a program that would get kids interested in engineering. And since then, we have become part of the Faculty of Applied Science at UBC. We've joined the national network Actua, which is kind of similar programs
hmm
all over the country, and we've exploded into this kind of full-blown organization, and our mission is to help children and youth in BC discover STEM or STEAM in a fun, low pressure, hands-on environment. And there's a lot of different ways that we do this. I know people in the lower mainland probably, when they think of us, they think of summer camps because
hmm
that is by far like our largest presence in the lower mainland, in Kelowna as well. But we've got after school and Saturday clubs where we meet weekly with kids. We've got weekend events, which are kind of one day, one off things where they'll have different themes. We'll do like engineering design competitions. We focus a lot on high school youth and high school girls.
hmm
And then we also travel to rural and indigenous communities all around BC to deliver STEAM programming. We do teacher professional development. So essentially, we teach teachers how to teach STEM and how to make the ADST curriculum fun
hmm
and engaging for their students. We do workshops in schools as well. So teachers will invite us to come to their classroom and deliver like an hour and a half program to their students. We also run things like a leadership program for high school students called the STEM Leadership Program, which is a newer one. We have internships for Indigenous high school students. We do a lot of free programming as well. So we'll
hmm
do a lot of clubs within the Vancouver School Board
Yeah, you
or
guys
with
are
other
everywhere.
community members. We're everywhere, honestly. Yeah. We also do a lot of bursary programs as well. So
hmm
people who need it can apply for like our summer camps or our clubs. And we also kind of, beside like the delivery aspect of it, we also employ around 200
hmm
student positions annually. So we've got a lot of student involvement. We've got teachers. We've got kids.
You
We've
have
kind of
every
got it
single
all.
level. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
completely. You have every single level of like youth engagement in STEM or STEAM, and you have every single aspect of organization in the lower mainland and Kelowna. And I love that
Yeah.
you also have different stakeholders. Like, I love your work that you guys are doing with Indigenous communities and teaching STEM and STEAM to Indigenous communities. The work with teachers is so important as well,
Hmm.
of engaging teachers into the conversation and teaching teachers is a
Yes.
fantastic thing. And just it's so cool to see the program become so big again, being like a local
Hmm.
Vancouverite. Even I feel like the couple years that I've been aware of Gearing Up, I feel like it's blossomed into this
Hmm.
huge program, and it's really cool to see. We were speaking beforehand, my partner is a UBC graduate, and to have him get the Gearing Up
Yeah.
like alumni to be like, please come support the program. It's just really wonderful to see that network and how much good you guys are doing in every single aspect of the community.
Yeah, we've definitely got a lot of spread over the lower mainland for sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
And Kelowna. And all over BC. Our instructors go on some really far trips sometimes. And it's, yeah. And it's even as a gearing up staff, I think it takes you like a full year in your position to fully understand like the scope of what we do,
Mhm.
just because there's so much and there's so many opportunities as well. Yeah.
Mhm. It's
So
really
many avenues to get involved as well. Yeah.
yes, it's true. Yes, if like that's the thing
Yeah.
is like if you want to become if you're listening to this and you're like, "Oh my god, I want to become this. I'm an engineer or I'm a teacher
Hmm.
or involved whatever you would like." Like I think you guys are always kind of looking for volunteers and
Oh, yeah.
people to help within the community. So,
Hmm.
yeah, wherever they want to help, I think you guys are there.
Shameless plug. I had to.
No, you gotta. You honestly, please.
Yeah.
People want to know, right? Like people do want to help you guys.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things we run into the most is people know about our summer camps usually. So a lot of
Mhm.
people don't know about us at all, which is, just a
Mhm.
barrier that we have to overcome. But we are a lot more than that. And I say that as the one that focuses mainly on the summer camps. Like my colleagues do really amazing work and they deserve all of the credit and all of the acknowledgement for it.
I love that you called yourself out because I was like, I'm about to dive into the summer camps to be like, hey, can you please speak to us about the summer camps, about
Yeah,
your role? But yes, it's true. Like, I think that that might have been like bread and butter and still is. But I do think that you guys have done so much as an organization, has done so much good for the province and continues to do so much good. And again, different levels of organization. But that being said, if we could dive into the bread and butter
absolutely.
of the camps. Your role is the manager of the Lower Mainland Camps and Clubs portfolio, which is a huge breadth of kind of organizations and people that you talk to. Could you kind of describe your role and responsibilities and how you got involved with Gearing Up? Because you've been volunteering at Gearing Up for a while and then have worked towards this role, which is also really cool to see.
Yeah. I'll start at the beginning, I guess. I started with Gearing Up in 2019 as a co op student. So I was in the arts co op program, was looking for jobs. I was a staff recruitment position, so interviewing people that would become the next camp instructors. And instead of that, they put me in the local event student assistant position. So I got to basically do the logistics and planning of our events campaign. And I got to, I had those experiences where I just figured out like, oh my gosh, engineering is a huge realm and the
Mhm.
kids deserve to know about it. And it was it was just a pivotal experience for me because I
Mhm.
was working with two kind of areas that I was really unfamiliar with, and one of them was like our engineering explorations event, which is it's like a space for girls, whether they're cis, trans, genderqueer, non-binary, other gender minorities as well, to kind of explore engineering. And, as someone who hasn't explored engineering, I was also doing it at the same time as them. And so that was really cool. And none of the kids ever knew. So I consider that a success. And then I was also working with our event campaign at the time called Let's Talk Tech. And we did a lot of coding events with
Mm,
kids. And I had never coded before in my life. It was
so cool.
just something that I had never thought of. But when I started, I was like, oh my gosh, people need to know like
Mhm.
it is accessible, like it can be, we just have to put effort into it. And so yeah, it was in there that I kind of not only saw the breadth and range of engineering, but I really got like dipped my toes into the nonprofit industry and
Mm,
just working on outreach and delivery and things like that. And then, so in my current role as the assistant manager of the camps, clubs, and event portfolio, I kind of have stepped away a bit from directly delivering our programs, but I now kind of broadly oversee our summer camps, our clubs,
mm.
and our events for the entirety of the Lower Mainland. Yeah, it's
It's
a
huge. It's a
lot.
big job.
Yeah, it is, but I have honestly the most incredible team
Mm,
working with me. I've got this amazing team of leaders and instructor staff who make everything that we do possible. Like I could not do it without such a strong team. They make everything so easy and it's awesome. And so I work broadly more on kind of the budgeting aspect, the project management of the different teams, liaising with the Faculty of Applied Science and other UBC entities, as well as with like our community partners in the greater Vancouver area, and then also just with our other Gearing Up teams as well. We do a
yeah.
lot of like interconnected things, and while we have like these different portfolios, we work with each other quite a bit, and we have a very like intertwined team.
Mhm. I love that win of being like, the kids never knew that I was one
Yeah.
step ahead of them when you first started. I mean, like, this is all new to you as well. Like, that's pretty
Yeah.
beautiful and like also kind of funny looking back, right? Like of now that you're like on an organization side and you're on like a more structured kind of holistic side of their camps and their events. It's funny to be like, yeah, you were boots on the ground and being like, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's try to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like,
It's honestly also that having that experience, it made it so much easier to move up the ranks, and
mhm,
because I understand the experience of being a student and working and being an instructor as well. And that's something that we really value in our team is like internal growth too. So it's
mm.
been really cool for sure. Yeah.
No, totally. Like, yes, internal growth within the organization and the NGO, but like also fantastic learning experience for you, and
Yeah.
you can kind of understand to be like what works, what doesn't, what's needed, what's
Hmm.
challenging, like what are the resources that actually matter when everything is all hell is breaking loose, like what do you actually need as somebody on the ground. Like it does give you that like breadth of background and information, so that's wonderful to see. When we're talking a little bit about boots on the ground and we're talking about like what is the actual state there, could we kind of speak to why are we even concerning ourselves with youth engagement? Like, so what is that baseline now? And like, how important is it to increase that baseline and increase youth engagement?
Yeah, there's a lot of different like levels to it because
Hmm.
you think of like the experience in the industry, and I know you have a lot of great talks on your podcast as well with people in the industry and how like they've made change and how things still need to change. And we're taking kind of a look at how to prime the next generation
Hmm.
to prepare them for that. And so, we know that the population of engineering students and practicing engineers in Canada does not reflect national or provincial populations in like gender, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, indigeneity, all of those things. And we also know that childhood and adolescence is a critical time to
Hmm.
introduce people to STEM fields. We want them to develop, their STEM identity because that's going to motivate them to later pursue STEM careers if they're interested in it. And like, I think we all can understand you close doors really early on just by the
Hmm.
nature of having to choose classes for yourself in
Yeah.
high school very early on, right? Like those doors close as soon as you decide like, oh, I'm not taking grade 12 math because I don't need to.
At
So
16.
it's
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I still don't even know what I want to do when I grow up, but like
Yeah.
when I think back to being 16, I had absolutely no idea. I never could have thought I would end up here of all
Hmm.
places. But that's why we're really focused on giving these kids experience to all of the possibilities early on so that they
Hmm.
know. And yeah, like there's been research done. We know that like intervention with children in STEM settings can be effective at changing their gender stereotypes. So there's this really cool study. It was the Engendering Success in STEM study. They came into Gearing Up camps in 2019 before my time, and they did interventions, and it showed that it can be effective if we
Mm.
put the effort into helping kids just understand that there's a place for them here.
Yeah.
They have a voice. They can succeed in STEM, and there's also like recent research that's shown that STEM outreach programs can help kids increase their like self-efficacy in STEM and their sense of belonging. And even our team is now finally focusing on getting research done on like the impact that our programs are having and the
Hmm.
populations that we're reaching and things like that. So there's a lot of like up and coming kind of literature in the world as well. So it's all really interesting, and there's so much that I guess we could talk about. But I guess it kind of boils down to that the fact that we have to put effort into not just reaching kids but also reaching underrepresented groups and doing so in meaningful ways. Our organization's in this planning phase right now of figuring out how to deepen our impact and not just kind of aim
Surface
for.
level,
Yeah,
everybody. Hmm.
exactly, exactly. And so one of the greatest ways that we've seen this is in our STEM leadership program, where every summer we have over 300 high school students who like volunteer with us, and they give us their
Oh,
time and they help us out in our camps, and they are absolutely pivotal to making summer camps happen.
yeah.
And then we have this other program called the STEM leadership program where 30 of them go through and they develop leadership skills. We work on professional development things with them. And then they work on a social development project over the summer where they learn engineering skills. They come up with an idea to like find a solution to a problem.
Mm.
They present it at the end of the summer, and just the impact of that program versus kind of like just sheer spread
Hmm.
is entirely different.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of different ways to kind of
To go at the
look
same
at it.
problem and like look at it a little bit.
Yeah,
It's really interesting to see like the more targeted or the like more in-depth stage of gearing up. And I think that like you do need the first general spread because like that's step one, right? Step two is maybe let's deepen that impact and
exactly.
let's have a stronger impact on like maybe a smaller group, but like those 30 kids, you're going to change their lives. They're going to remember that. That's going to be a pivotal moment in their adolescence and in their learning journey. And what a wonderful thing to give these students and these young people such good professional skills and kind of background and to help them with that next step before university. Like that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love your guys' idea in general. The foundation that it's back to literature and this foundational idea of trying to have the population of your program and what you guys are teaching and who you're talking to have those stakeholders actively represent the community that you're trying to better serve and to have adequate
Mhm.
representation of not only just gender but on all different aspects of diversity and inclusion, right? Like I think that is the most impactful, especially if you're trying to bring in minority groups within STEM, which we know we have to have. We know that
Mhm.
that makes every entire society better because society is, in my idea, is built on STEM and trades
Mhm.
are kind of the foundation of society, and we know that both of those things will get better as we increase diversity. So that's beautiful that your camps and your organizations and who you're talking to kind of mimics that literature and population. Is there anything else that you believe that like will be fundamental in moving the needle forward in terms of youth engagement? Is there anything else that we need in that kind of magical formula of increasing representation?
Mhm. There's a couple different areas that I think we need to focus on in order to make the change that we need. So first, I would say engaging change makers. So
Okay.
this is where our school programs team focuses on helping teachers across BC learn how to deliver like engineering content in a way that is engaging for their students and also just not so daunting.
Yeah.
Engineering is a scary word. We can't pretend it's not. Like it's
Yeah.
got stigma
Connotation.
associated to it.
Hmm.
Exactly. And by injecting that into school curriculum, that just reduces a barrier. We can reach as many kids as we can, but by reaching teachers and
Hmm.
people that are other also reaching kids, like that just further just proliferates that reach. And then I think also reducing stigma surrounding
Hmm.
STEM and engineering with our audiences, dispelling myths, addressing facts.
Hmm.
We can't skirt around the fact that women are
Yeah.
underrepresented in engineering. Like that's a fact. We have to address it, and we can't just pretend
Break
that
it
that's not the
down.
case.
No,
Exactly.
no, you have to kind of explain it of like historically, why did we think that they weren't allowed to be engineers for a long time? It's not that they're not
Exactly.
engineers by nature. You were an engineer as a kid. You were helping your dad on your hobby farm. It's just that they were
Yep.
not allowed to go to school and they weren't allowed to practice in Canada until like
Hmm.
the 80s. It was absolutely ridiculous. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then also just being transparent about the changes that need to be made in the field.
Mm.
So, we just need to keep talking about it,
Hmm.
essentially. It needs to be a conversation that keeps happening. It needs to happen at all levels, with the kids in our programs, with the parents that bring their kids to the programs, with teachers, with, you know, legislative people that make change as well. And yeah, there's just so many different levels to it and tiers, and it's definitely a multifaceted approach that needs to happen. But yeah, and then I would also say a community involvement
Mm.
is very important in this regard. So everyone needs to invest in the next generation. It could be investing your time, so like by mentoring or providing guidance to young
Hmm.
STEM learners. It could also be like providing funding or support to programs that do STEM outreach. And it could even just be like in kind support or opening your space for the next generation to explore and learn. And I think also just avenues like this, like having your podcast where you take industry professionals and you tell their stories, it just further helps other people who are out there like hear what it's like to be in the field, the changes that need to happen, the changes that have happened over the
Hmm.
the past couple decades. But like just opening avenues for conversation is just as important.
No, thank you. Thank you for that. That's very kind. It's kind of like what we hope to do, but thank you very much. And like, I know one thing that we've kind of already a little bit talked about it, but I was wondering if we could kind of speak a little bit about bias and about like the importance of early intervention in terms of some of the data that's come out. Because some of these papers are honestly like the first time I read it, I was so sad the first time I read
Hmm.
this paper that like young girls learn that science, learning air quotes, very, very much air quotes, they learn that science and STEM isn't meant for them as young as 6 years old, which is grade one, which is absolutely crazy. And I know you guys already are in schools doing early intervention. Like, what type of things are you doing to help unlearn that bias? I know you're trying to make like STEM really an engineering less scary? Like, what does that less scary look like? Are you breaking it down to like that these young girls are already engineers because they're already helping their mom and dad, or they're already building something and they're already problem solving? Like, what does that actually look like to really combat that very, very young age bias that they're being exposed to?
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean as well, because I remember in our psychology classes as well, we would
Mm-hmm.
always learn about how it's that study that like girls aren't good at math, and that
Mm-hmm.
was what, they were looking at the bias of that, and it's like, if you tell girls that they can be good at math, does that make an impact?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is yes, because it's all about the bias and what we're told as young kids, right? Like, it's so very important, and we're still working on how to get there the best way possible, and that's why we're doing things like
Mm-hmm.
trying to do our own research and participating in research and trying out new things as well to see what is the best approach.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I have to keep saying to people is like, we are not an academy. Like, you're not
Mm,
coming out of this, you're not coming
that's
out of a summer
smart.
camp with, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're not coming out of it with credentials. We're not providing you with like credits or anything. This is purely a space for you to explore. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
something that, a lot of parents are really hoping that we would be an academy and that we would like take their kids to the next level, but that's just not what we're about. We're about exploration and just figuring it
Mm-hmm.
out. Yeah. So early intervention also helps with combating bias. It provides a space for girls to exist in these spaces where,
Mm-hmm.
it's not only about telling little girls that they can exist in this space, it's also showing little boys that they do,
Yeah.
and that they have a space there. And that's what the engendering success in STEM study did, is like they focused on helping little boys combat their bias.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that really, really interesting, is like it's both parties,
Yeah.
right? It's all the parties.
Totally.
And it's also like early intervention helps provide role models as well. So allowing girls and other gender non-conforming youth to see themselves in STEM,
Mm-hmm.
to have role models and people in front of them that they can see and be like, oh, that could be me someday.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was, I think, last year, I went into a camp. They've been having trouble with this camper because this camper had an exceptionality and they just weren't engaged with the content. And the camper looked at my name tag and they saw that I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. And this kid looked at my name tag. They said,
Oh.
like, I use they, them pronouns too. And like,
Ah.
they just started telling me all about like their family and their stuffed animal and their stuff. And like,
Oh,
then,
amazing.
and that was
Yeah.
the point where that kid clicked and they started engaging with the content because they realized that like they were welcome here and like
Mm-hmm.
they could see themselves.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Like that's that.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, like totally. Like I would have been like, if I had been in your position, I would have like had that interaction and then gone and cried and been like,
Yeah.
because it's like you could see yourself in them, right? And be like, okay,
Exactly.
that's what I probably needed as like,
Yep.
oh, that's gorgeous. And like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, and it's hard to like, when you think about it, it's really hard to engage with a field or a topic where you can't see yourself in it.
mm-hmm.
Like, if you are in a science class and all of your teachers have been male identifying up until a certain age, like, you're not really going to be able to see yourself there. And that's really one of the biggest things that we focus on. And, we try to aim for having representation of self
Mm-hmm.
identified women in all of our camps whenever we can. We have a lot of concerted efforts towards getting girls and other gender nonconforming youth into STEM, where we have our all girls week, where an entire week of camps every year is
Yeah.
just a space for girls and
That's it.
anyone else. Like,
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, like, it's always such a great week because all of the instructors come out of it too and they're like, that was refreshing. Like,
Yeah.
that was
And healing. I think it's like healing
exactly.
for everybody. It really is. Like it
Yeah.
passes it forward. In terms, I think you guys do so many things right, but in terms of maybe what's something that you struggle with in this space, and then how can we help you as the greater community? I know that was one thing of like, let's move the needle forward and let's bring
Mhm.
everybody on board, but like, what's your challenge? And then of that particular challenge, how can we help you as a greater community?
Yeah, there were like kind of three main areas that I identified as our biggest barriers, and they were funding, space, and expertise. And so to kind of dive into each of those, first and foremost is obviously funding. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
operate as a nonprofit, despite the fact that we're embedded within the university. And so our paid programs kind of go on to support our barrier-free programming. But of course, inflation is at an all-time high,
Yeah.
costs are high. it's an expensive world out there right now. And so like funding sources are crucial for us to succeed. And we have a lot of, we have a lot of support from our network member in the university and a lot of different sponsors within the program. But, for us to remain cutting edge and to keep doing more and to keep up with the pace that inflation is going at, like it's always important to be able to fund our programs, and like we pay our university student staff, right? So
Yeah.
we're not just,
No, you're
yeah,
not
there's a
like
lot.
taking advantage of people. You guys are doing good in every single aspect,
Yeah.
including supporting your staff. But that NGO and that aspect does take funding.
Mhm.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and I mean, like our instructor staff, they deserve so much more than we're able to provide with for them. But it's, yeah, the NGO sphere is, it's hard to be able to do that, and so yeah, funding is obviously like it's going to be time and time again. Like
Hmm.
every time you ask us is the biggest
Funding.
barrier. Yeah,
Hmm.
and it's also like when we're doing programs where we're traveling and we're going out to remote places, like the travel in itself is expensive,
Hmm.
and you know anything helps at this point, I
Yeah.
would say. And so space is also a big one. So we don't really, as a program, have claim to physical learning space. So we don't have like our own
Hmm.
kid-centered classroom or lab or makerspace or anything. We're always keeping mobility in mind with our programs.
Hmm.
And that's why like a lot of our programs are us coming to people, like we get invited into spaces a lot. We're basically like STEM vampires. Like you have to invite us in order for us to do anything. So we really rely on community partners in our like offsite locations, people who open their doors to us, schools who invite us to come back year and year again. But there's just a lot of uncertainty behind it as
Hmm.
well too. So it's never guaranteed that things will stay the same. We saw this in 2020. Like
Hmm.
everything changed when the pandemic hit, and we had to completely pivot to existing in the online sphere. But yeah, space is a huge one. It's just
Mm.
like
Where do we
having a
go?
space. Exactly. Where do
Yeah.
the kids have space to learn and explore? And then I would also say on the expertise front, this is also part of staying cutting edge and staying relevant with the kids, because
Yeah.
we have to keep up. We have to keep up with them as well. And STEM fields also are just always
Changing.
evolving. They're always changing
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, like new research is always coming out, like new
It's the beauty of it.
exciting spheres like
Hmm.
AI. Oh my gosh, in the time that we developed a camp about AI and the absolute boom that it had in the last year,
Hmm.
it was 4 months, and it just kind of like completely shifted how that camp went, because we had to suddenly incorporate, like, talking about ethics in AI
Yeah.
and, the impact that AI can have. And now we've even gone on to start incorporating that into our teacher professional development. It's like, hey, teachers, AI is here to stay. Like, this is how
Hmm.
you can utilize it. This is what you should be looking for. Like, we have to stay relevant. And part of that is having access to expertise and people in the field who are willing to work with us and tell us, like, what we can do and what we can focus on, because, we're student run. We've got a lot
Hmm.
of people who are like first, second year engineering, and they've gone through the basic courses in that, but they're not experts yet.
And
And
that's okay.
like,
But yes.
and exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. But like, in order for us to kind of really delve into the specifics of the different types of careers that are open to kids, we really need people to tell us, because like,
What that
I'm
is.
not an engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of our organization, our core team are people who come from really different backgrounds. Like, we've got
Mm.
teachers, we've got people like myself from psychology, we've got, you know it's just a huge range of people. But yeah, like expertise is a huge one for us, and mentorship and guidance.
Mm. No, I love that answer. And I love the fact that it has kind of these three prongs. And like, honestly, to some extent, they're also all related, right? Like, your general
Hmm.
mission is to let's deepen the impact, but also let's bring impact to maybe communities that are underserved. And like, that is going to require travel. And we have to go to those spaces. But then also, the importance of space is so necessary when we're going to communities that might not have the infrastructure. They might not have the teachers. They might not have the expertise. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to take these programs? How are we going to make these programs accessible to lower income families, right? Like, that does require both funding and space. So like, it aligns to your goal of like, that is your needs that you guys have. Same thing with expertise, and same thing that like, it's wonderful that you have so much student involvement and youth involvement, but that does have not a cost, because I don't want to put
Hmm.
that negative of a word or an association on it, but there is going to be a balance side of that. Is like, yes, you do
Hmm.
need maybe some industry experts and some people
Yeah,
to step in and to help kind of guide where we're going. And like the beauty of engineering and sciences is that that's constantly changing, right? Like it's constantly dynamic. So
always.
as soon as you were like, "Oh, we did a summer camp on AI," I was like, "Oh, it changed
Yep.
completely." Like I knew where you were going. I was like, and it was all completely to be changed to the next level for people to help. So can they help on those three things? Like if people have like a maker space, if they're listening to this and they're like, "Oh my goodness, I actually have," or I'm part of a community center, or I'm part of an organization through the YMCA or something like that. Like, I love the term STEM vampire. I did not know that's where you were going. I cracked me up. But like, if we can help you with the STEM vampire problem, or if we can help you with the funding, is that kind of something that's available for the public if they're listening? Can they
Mhm.
contact you guys? How does that happen? Of like that the big community comes in and they support you guys?
Yeah, I'm gonna break it down into three more prongs because
Okay,
I think
please.
there's just so many avenues for people to get involved, big or small. First, I would start with like engagement, just
Mm,
overall, whether it be providing mentorship. So we even have like a mentorship for indigenous high school students. So
mm,
like you can be a mentor for those. You can come into our summer camps and deliver an activity for the kids. You can come in and show them what you do in your job. Like you can all of that kind of stuff, or even just kind of consulting with us and talking to us about curriculum in our camps that we could deliver. Like if you
mm.
had a really cool idea and you were like, this would be a super fun activity for a kid to do in a summer camp that might get them interested in mining
Engineering.
engineering or
Mhm.
biomed or, all of the different types of engineering. We want to hear it. And we have a lot of really creative people on our team and like we all come up with really cool ideas, but having external voices come in and tell us fresh new
Mhm.
content is just so helpful. And then yeah, with the kind of the space conversation is opening space for children and teens to
Mm.
see what it's like to work in STEM is also really important. So
Like on-site visits
some
and stuff like
yeah,
that. Okay.
exactly. Some of the most like impactful kind of anecdotes and responses that we've gotten for from kids is in camps where we've had site visits or lab tours and demonstrations. Like
Oh, cool.
one of our Surrey camps this summer went to Finning, who does like Caterpillar
Oh,
machines and tractors and things like that.
cool.
And the kids got to drive a digger and they got to like try it out and
So
go around
jealous.
the site. Yeah,
So
honestly,
jealous.
I saw the pictures after and I was like, oh my goodness, I wish I was there. And yeah, like Finning is a really big supporter of us. BGC Engineering came into and did an event with us where they had actually made the geological like site maps that they do
Oh,
in the field and
cool.
they had made them just for us and they had made this problem and worked on an engineering design competition with the kids. We do tours in a lot of labs at UBC when
Mhm.
profs and researchers welcome us in. It really changes the game because the kids get to see like what university would be like and what being a student would be like and being
Yeah.
in those labs. We have like a whole team in at Gearing Up that focuses on quantum computing and
Yeah.
kind of that realm of things and that cutting edge technology. And so places like the Quantum Algorithm Institute, the Quantum Matter Institute, like they've welcomed us into their space. They've shown us things like their quantum suitcase, which I can't explain it, but it was really cool to see. But like having stuff like that is just it makes the world of a difference and
Mhm.
it makes things more tangible, I think, for the kids. It's less conceptual, it's more
Mhm.
experiential. Experiential learning is absolutely crucial for getting kids into things. So when people welcome us into their spaces or they come to us and they visit us and they show us what they do, it makes a huge impact on those kids. And then kind of diving back into like sponsorship,
Mm.
it could be just as much as supporting like our bursary program where we send kids to camp who otherwise couldn't afford it.
Mhm.
It makes a huge impact. Like I get to personally go through those applications and the
Aw.
parents and I get to talk to them and it's just change a game changer for those families and for
Mhm.
those kids to be able to come to the program that they wouldn't be able to access otherwise. Yeah, like it's just that kind of stuff, but also helping us continue and further developer initiatives,
Mhm.
whatever you
Whatever
feel
you
most
want.
passionate about.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
if you're interested in supporting teachers, if you're interested in supporting like Black youth in STEM, Indigenous youth in STEM, girls and non binary youth in STEM,
Mhm.
like we've
You
just
have
got so
it.
many avenues. Exactly. Like whatever your heart desires and whatever you feel most passionate about. And I think the last kind of point that I would say is helping spread the word.
Mm.
So like people don't know, and even within UBC themselves, like don't know that we exist.
Yeah.
My boss likes to say that we're UBC's best kept secret, because it's just not everyone's gonna know who we are, but if more people know who we are, we can
Will
help
help.
each other.
Hmm.
Exactly. So like spreading the word about GU, about STEM outreach, word of mouth has given us such incredible staff. Like people tell their friends to like apply for jobs with us, to volunteer with us, to mentor, to have partnerships with us, opportunities. Like I've had a lot of recently like researchers reach out too about
Mm.
collaborating on that kind of stuff. So word of mouth is just huge and pivotal, and like it really shows. Like recently we won an award with like IEEE, which is an
Hmm.
engineering
Yes. Yeah. It's a huge,
organization.
yeah, across all
Yeah,
of
and
Canada.
like
Yeah.
exactly, but like from that, people have been reaching out to us and
Hmm.
reaching out about helping us and working with us, and so it just goes to show that like spreading the word and having that exposure is pivotal for us.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It makes such a big impact. No, thank you for all of your answers. But I love the stepwise approach, and I also love the engineering design approach of answering the
Yeah.
question and a problem to be like, okay, well, you see, there's three buckets, and let's go
Yeah.
through each bucket. But like, it's so good at kind of explaining the scope of what you guys do and the scope of like availability. If you want to help, honestly, there's something that you can do. Like there is three big buckets, and each bucket is a make your own adventure. And like
Exactly.
it's cool to also see again the like organizational level. If somebody here is from an organization that wants to give space, they can. If someone's on a research level, they can. Industry also okay. Like
Yeah.
funding, wonderful. Mentorship, wonderful. And I love that call out too, to be like, hey, if you're listening and you might not be Vancouver based, that's
Hmm.
fine. We're part of a larger network, and there's so many people that are focused on this problem, which is so wonderful because it's such a nuanced, big society problem that it's great to see multiple people kind of step into this space and into this role. I love that call out of being like, yes, we're one of many, and
Hmm.
there's always the availability to help kind of throughout different parts of Canada. Maybe that's, I don't want to lead you down a road, but like maybe maybe that's the answer. But is there anything right now in this space that, and I know we talked about challenges, it's a hard battle. It's a hard thing. Is there anything within this space that kind of gives you hope? And is there something that really sticks to you and comes to mind that you're like, you know what, we're gonna be okay? Like that person, place, thing that helped me out.
I think there's so much, honestly, that gives me hope in this sphere.
Mm.
It's daunting, the world that we have out in front of us, but I think there's so many different factors, like people that support us. It ranges from our staff
Mm.
who continue to choose to help the next generation discover their passion for STEM. They see themselves in these kids and they want to
Mhm.
help them and bolster those connections. It's the youth volunteers in our programs who give up time from their summer holidays to
Aw,
come and help us. Some of
yeah.
them will give up their entire summer because they're just so passionate about helping out kids. It's our community partners who provide us space, who give mentorship and guidance, our sponsors and supporters who make it all possible for us to do this work. And for the parents, like for parents investing in their children, for
Mm.
like to show their kids the pathways they could have into STEM, and also just like the kids and their innovative ideas,
Mm.
their passion, their enthusiasm, everything that they bring to the program, because they just bring so much. Yeah, so there's just so many different factors that I
Mm.
think give me hope for where we're going in the future, and just the impact that we have as an organization, as a national network, as individuals who are working in this sphere. And I think, yeah, like if I had to sum it up into kind of like one line, I would say something that gives me hope is that like I've met the change makers of tomorrow, and I
Ah.
cannot wait for you all to see where they
Mhm.
take us. It's gonna be great.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. That's a beautiful way to end it. And thank you. Thank you for that. And yeah, I kind of always, I personally always think of that as well, because I know like what always lives in my head is stats of being like, okay, well, we represent 5% women and non-binary folk and gender minorities. We represent 5% in trades, and we represent, I think,
Hmm.
in total across all STEM fields, if it's averaged out, I think we represent 15. And I always think of like, maybe that's very sad, of like that is a low number. But then I like to think of what does that 5% look like? And what does that 15% look like? And like, who are the people that represent that? And to be like, oh my God, they are the coolest, most
Yeah.
badass, powerful people that I've ever met in my entire life. So, like,
Yeah.
and like, that's just the beginning, right? Like, the change makers and like the next generation, they're like little firestorms. They're absolutely incredible. So, like, it's just, the people that are make up that 5 and 15%, like they're so powerful. And like, yeah, can't wait to see what they do. Well, Kaylin, this has been such a joy on my Friday afternoon. Thank you so much for taking time with me and talking to me with Gearing Up and kind of explaining what you guys do and your mission and the program, because I think it deserves to be shouted at from the rooftops. And we're going to do our best to make sure that more people know about you and that you guys are not UBC's best kept secret, because you should not be. You should be their pride and joy. So thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me out here. And, we're on almost all of the social media, so people can always follow along
Mhm.
with our stories, check out our website. There's always ways to get involved. Send us an email, reach out. We're always looking for new ways to connect with the community.
Mhm. Oh, it's
Thanks,
amazing.
Alexis.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. And for those listening, please do what Kaylin just said. Please go follow them on everything. And please, if you have any inkling, if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to help them with being a STEM vampire and giving them space or giving them funds or giving them expertise, please go ahead and do so and reach out to the program, because they deserve your love and support. And for those listening to the Smoko podcast, I just want to say thank you. And we will see you next Wednesday with another wonderful guest. Bye bye for now.